Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to take a look at bearing-only launch weapons and some of their tactical implications. So what is a bearing-only launch? That simply means that we pick a vector and we fire the weapon and hope it hits something. So there's a couple different ways we can do bearing-only launches inside of Command. The simplest method is you simply grab a unit, right-click on it, and you go to Attack Options, and there's this thing that says BOL. The other option, of course, you can press Control F1, and it gives you this little crosshair. Now this little crosshair is actually doing two things for you. It's providing us a direction. It's also providing us a go here. So in the sense of if I'm launching, for example, a bearing-only launch torpedo, I'd be launching it to a position and then turning on the sensor once it reached that. If I'm launching a bearing-only launch, let's say like a nuclear weapon, obviously this is going to be the thing I'm shooting at, such as, the ground or something like that. Unfortunately, there's a lot less bearing-only launch options that we have at our disposal. In my opinion, I should be able to give a Coast to MacArthur haircut with artillery, but they don't let us do that yet, which is, that sucks, because I like the MacArthur haircut. I find it entertaining. So let's see what this looks like in action. So I'm going to go ahead and spacebar, and we're going to do some listening. There's a SAM site. Don't worry, we'll deal with that later. Listening, I'm just doing some listening. I got my UNS Rocinante here, taking a nice quiet listen to the water. Just looking around, not doing anything too excessive. Let's go pop up to... Oh, we've detected something. Fire. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fire a weapon down this bearing. So I'm going to go ahead and press Control F1. I have no idea where the target is on this bearing, so I'm just going to pick it randomly. Click right there and boink. And I'll go ahead and put a little bit of a spread on this one here. We'll fire one there, we'll fire one there, and we'll fire one there. Fire, 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 fire. So what's going to happen now is I'm going to fire those weapons down that bearing. Now, for those of you who are very, very familiar with games like Dangerous Waters, apparently he must have spotted something and panicked. Oh, look at that. There happens to be something there. So if you notice now, from those of you familiar with Dangerous Waters, this is basically that snapshot you always take when somebody shoots a torpedo at you. So now what's going to happen is this weapon's going to go ahead and turn on its sensor, and it's going to go basically live once it hits this point here. Luckily for us, we did detect a vessel up there a few moments earlier. The reason we picked that up is because, of course, the Rocinante got high enough so that my handy-dandy Milli Vanilli Chili Willy was able to go ahead and detect them so that we could go ahead and pass that information on. So, of course, normally you wouldn't do a bearing launch here. You just click on the sub, hit F1, and let it rip. So we're going to take a look at another bearing-only launch weapon, and that is going to be everybody's favorite, the HARM missile. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to aircraft real quick. I'm going to get my F-16 BO. I feel like if I type this one more time, the game is just going to say you're not allowed to use these anymore, but too bad. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab everybody's favorite little weapon here. And let's see if I can find it. Here we are. Press OK. And now I can actually bearing-only launch this too. So I'm going to go pause for just half a second here. So I noticed that this SAM site has an active air search radar. Now, normally I could press F1, go ahead and click on him, and he'd go ahead and engage that missile. But let's say that I was trying to sneak up on this site and trick it into firing. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go like this. And I'm going to order him to start moving. I'm not going to fire yet. It's very tempting to take a pot shot at the early warning radar, but that'd be a waste of weapons in my opinion. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to creep up on him, and I'm going to fire a bearing-only launch weapon at him so that the moment his radar goes active, that missile basically homes in on him. Think of it as a preemptive strike. All right, so Control F1, click on him, fire. Now notice, when I launched, it's going to say it has no emission lock. This weapon's just traveling. So what's going to happen now is it's going to keep on going, and our F-16 buddy is going to accidentally get itself... Let me get a little bit closer here. It's going to accidentally put itself into harm's way. No, I guess the other guy would be putting himself in harm's way. So what's going to happen is this missile on its own is just going to keep cruising towards here. And of course, what's going to happen in just a moment is this battery is going to start using its targeting radar to go ahead and engage this F-16. But look what's already on the way. We have a big angry harm. So our F-16 is well within range here. Go ahead and get a little bit closer so it doesn't mess me up here. There it goes, fire. Now notice my F-16 is now being engaged, but now my little harm, which I preemptively launched, is going to attempt to get an emission lock and go ahead and pop itself onto that radar. So in this case, you can see that the emission lock was not successful. Oh, there it goes. Check it out, check it out, check it out, check it out. Look, 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 look. Watch this. F-16, you might want to turn and run. Run, 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 run. Watch this. Cheap shot. Bam. And those two ray missiles go dumb. Got it. So that is an excellent use of the bearing-only launch attack. Obviously, you have to time it better than I did, but this is just a demonstration. You'll get better at those things with time. I think it's called a PBL launch. I don't remember the exact name for it. So now let's take a look at one more use of a bearing-only weapon, and that is to go ahead and use decoys, which is kind of fun. So I've got myself the good old-fashioned Enterprise here, and I got a bunch of puking dogs. We had one of these at our local air museum. It always cracked me up with just how big that airplane is. Like, you think F-14, you don't realize that thing's gigantic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch these three groups real fast. I don't think you can launch at 2 knots. That'd be kind of dangerous. We'll send these guys over here. Let's grab these guys and send them over here. And let's grab these guys and, well, if they launch, there we go, and send them over here. Okay, so now we're going to use decoys. So the way decoys work, it depends on the decoy, first of all, is we bearing only launch down a vector, and theoretically, the enemy should go, oh, what's that? And go ahead and fire a bunch of weapons and waste an awful lot of ammunition in that process. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my decoy launchers here. You can see I've got a pretty long radius. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of saturate the coast with some decoys here. I'll fire 2 over here. I'll fire 2 over here. Let's see, I'll go grab this guy right here. I'll fire 2 over here. I'll fire 1 a little bit short. This one's always kind of a fun trick here. Click this over here. We'll fire 1 that's going to be a little on the long side. And I will save 4 just for the purposes of kind of getting along here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my bombers, which are these guys here. Of course, this is my cap. So I'm going to get my cap in position. I'm going to go ahead and grab my bombers. I'm just going to put myself a little note here that just says, hey, by the way, this is the cutoff point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my bombers. I'm going to go ahead and slow them down. And I'm going to let my decoys kind of head down to the ground there. So there goes the decoys. And I expect these guys to loiter until I need you later. So here's what's going to happen. Our airplanes, I'm actually going to have to break off here. The reason I'm going to break off is because if I enter into the SAM's effective range, what's going to happen is the SAM's going to start taking pot shots at my F-14s here, rather than trying to attack these decoys. Now, these decoys right now are tracking pretty high. They're about 36,000 feet here. So they're basically simulating a pack of aircraft. Now, in the real world, of course, if I switch to the other team real quick, you can see this very clearly. You see we can only see one of these bogies reliably, and you can see we just engaged it. So that's awesome. The moment that missile got launched is the clue to have my other attackers swing around and do their job. So now they're thinking from the ground that these guys are actually enemy airplanes, and they're popping missiles up at it. Obviously, players tend to be a lot more clever than this. You know, they'll see this as a ploy. They'll know something does not look right about the flight path, or more importantly, look at how fast they travel. That's it. That's the clue. That's how you know you're being decoyed. So here's what happens. The SAM site's going to fire 2 of those, and then it's going to go ahead and fire more. Of course, every time it fires a missile, it has 1 less missile in its battery right now. So in this case, it's still attacking my decoys. Meanwhile, my main crew is getting into position to go ahead and do their attack. Now, here's a fun thought. How many missiles does a Fansong E have? The answer is quite a few. However, we know that it only has 6 ready. And for those of you who've been keeping track this whole time, you can see that it wasted 6 of its missiles already, which now means my F-14s can come ripping in here in a true F-14 fashion and blow that site to pieces without even being shot at once. Of course, I'm going to say that with a qualifier here, and I know the fact that all SAM sites always have some jerk face who's got himself a handy-dandy little, one of those little kind of shoulder launch dealies, like one of those SA-7s or SA-14s or something like that. So as they pass over this site and drop all their weapons, which unfortunately looks like they did not do, you guys are supposed to attack that. So sometimes there's a little bit of issues. Oh, there it is. There's the SAM. Told you. That would be some shoulder launch something or other as he went by. And these guys, of course, are disappointing me terribly by not dropping their ordnance. I think I grabbed the correct crew. I certainly did. Let's go ahead and pop them up to a slightly higher altitude. I think they're too low to safely strike here. You guys gonna oh, there we go. I was waiting for that. So this chap right here decided to get the first sets of bombs off. This one's going to come spinning around. You better not get tapped. I will be very disappointed if you get hit. And that SAM site is obliterated. All because instead of targeting the thing it was supposed to target, it got distracted by those decoys. So hopefully this helps you out as far as seeing how you can use bearing-only launches. Certain nuclear weapons also have bearing-only launch capability, which is actually a lot of fun as well. But again, you want to make sure you use them appropriately. Another thing to watch out for is if you are going to do that trick I did with the HARM, remember the HARM has to be able to see the radar in order to lock on. And the cone of the HARM is kind of tiny. So if you shoot too high with that weapon, what it will do is it'll basically look over the target it's supposed to engage and it won't do anything. But you got to see what it looked like in action. And I basically cheap shot at that radar, which is pretty fun. Other than that, enjoy.